Good evening, dear one. My name is Marit, and this is Whispers from the Cottage, a quiet place in the night where you can rest, breathe, and feel safe again. I'm so grateful you're here. Tonight, I want to bring you into a gentle story. A story about moving, about lightening what you carry, and about discovering how little you truly need to feel whole. It is the tale of a woman standing in the soft hush of evening, surrounded by boxes and memories. A woman who finds a single forgotten box, a box filled with things she once believed were essential. And when she opens it, she begins to understand that the heaviest things in life are often the ones we keep out of habit, not out of love. So settle in, sweet soul. Let the quiet of the night soften something inside you. Let your breath slow, let your shoulders fall, and allow yourself to be held by the gentle rhythm of this moment. Because tonight, we step into a house at the end of a season, a house wrapped in a wistful calm, carrying the faint sound of rain on the window. And together, we will follow the soft path of what it means to release what no longer needs to stay. The house exhaled around her as she stepped further into the dim, familiar room. Only one warm lamp glowed in the corner, casting a gentle amber light that softened the edges of everything it touched. It was the kind of light that made even the simplest moments feel like a small blessing. Boxes stood in quiet clusters along the walls, some open, some taped shut, some leaning against one another, as if they, too, were tired from all the changes. She moved slowly between them, her fingertips brushing the tops, as though greeting old companions. The cardboard felt dry and textured beneath her skin, still carrying the faint scent of storage rooms and long-forgotten shelves. The air was filled with the muted fragrance of worn wood and cooling evening air. A softness hung in the space, the kind that appears when the day has finally stopped asking for anything. Her footsteps were barely a sound on the wooden floorboards. They gave a small, familiar sigh under her weight, a sound she had heard on countless mornings and quiet nights like this one. For a moment, she simply stood still, letting the room settle around her, letting her breath fall into a slower rhythm, letting herself feel the strange mix of tenderness and release that comes with backing up a life. The house felt different tonight, not empty, not yet, but as though it was gently loosening its hold on her, as if it understood that both of them were learning to let go. She wrapped her arms lightly around herself, not out of sadness, but out of softness, the kind that says, "You've done enough for today. You're allowed to be slow now." In the stillness, she sensed the unspoken truth of the moment, that this evening was not only about leaving a place, but about finding space within herself for something quieter, something truer. And as her gaze drifted across the room, her eyes landed on a small corner she had not touched yet, a corner that held more than shadows. A corner where something waited, something she had forgotten. She walked toward the quiet corner, drawn by a feeling she couldn't quite name. Not urgency, not curiosity, but something gentler, like a soft tug at the edge of her awareness. The light from the lamp reached only halfway, so the shadows deepened as she approached. It was the kind of shadow that doesn't frighten, but invites you in, as if whispering that there is nothing to fear in the things you are finally ready to see. And there it was, a plain, dust-covered box tucked beneath the bottom shelf, as though it had been hiding for a very long time. She knelt down slowly, her knees pressing into the cool wooden floor. Dust rose in small, shimmering clouds, dancing briefly through the lamplight before settling again. Her fingers brushed the top of the box, and the cardboard felt different from the others she had packed. Not newer, not older, just familiar in a way that reached deeper than simple memory. She smoothed her hand across the surface, and below a thin layer of dust, she felt something faintly carved into the cardboard. She leaned closer. A single word, written years ago, almost faded, but still visible under her touch. Important. The breath she took afterward was slower than the one before. She didn't remember writing that word. Not exactly. But she remembered the version of herself who might have done it. A woman who collected things in the hope they would anchor her, shape her, prove something she could never quite name. The word felt heavier than anything the box could contain. For a moment, she simply sat there, hands resting on the edges, heart opening in a way she hadn't expected tonight. Then, with a quiet exhale, she pulled the box closer, settled cross-legged on the floor, and lifted the lid. The old cardboard gave a soft sigh, as though relieved to be seen again. Inside, the first shapes of old belongings waited in stillness. Ordinary things, yet carrying a weight she had once mistaken for meaning. And as the lamplight warmed her face, she understood that opening this box would not only empty out objects, but clear a space inside her that had been crowded for far too long. The first thing she lifted from the box was heavier than it looked. 2 old agendas, their covers bent at the corners, the pages slightly swollen from years of being carried everywhere. They felt dense in her hands, not because of the paper, but because of the life that had once been written inside them. She rested them on her lap and let her thumb slide along the edges. The texture was familiar, smooth from use, worn by days that asked too much of her. She opened the first one. The pages revealed themselves like a whisper from the past. Weeks packed from morning to night, tiny handwriting squeezed between lines, lists of tasks that never seemed to end, meetings, errands, promises, appointments she didn't even remember attending, moments she had rushed through because she believed she had to. Her breath tightened for just a second as her eyes moved slowly across the ink. There was no space on the pages, no pauses, no white margins, not a single empty morning. It was as if the woman she once was had tried to outrun her own tiredness. By never stopping, she turned another page and another. Every week looked the same, full, overflowing, breathless. Yet tonight, the sight didn't overwhelm her. It didn't shame her. Instead, it softened her heart. She felt compassion for the version of herself who believed that doing more would finally make her feel enough, for the woman who filled her days because she didn't know how to fill her soul. She closed the agenda with a slow, gentle movement. The sound of the pages settling was like a small release. She opened the second one. It was no different, dotted with reminders, deadlines, commitments she had made, mostly to others, rarely to herself. But this time, she didn't feel the old heaviness, only understanding, tenderness, a quiet recognition of how far she had come. She placed both agendas beside her, forming the first item in the may go pile, and as they left her hands, she felt something loosen inside her chest, as if an invisible strap had been unbuckled, a sense of relief that spread slowly like warm light through a window after rain. The room seemed a little wider, her breath a little deeper, her heart a little freer. She rested her palms on her knees and let the stillness settle. These agendas had once dictated her days, but now they were simply paper, pages of a story she no longer needed to carry. And with that gentle knowing, she looked back into the box, ready to discover what waited beneath. Beneath the agendas, wrapped in thin, crinkled paper that had yellowed with time, lay a small collection of gifts. She lifted the first one carefully, the way you pick up something fragile, even when you already sense it was never truly yours. The paper whispered as it unfolded. Inside was a candle in a color she never chose, a scent she never liked, a gift she had kept because she didn't want to hurt someone's feelings, because letting go had once felt like a kind of unkindness. She held it in her palms for a moment. It was smooth, cold, still perfectly unused. It had waited for years to be something she would reach for, but she never had. A soft sigh escaped her, not of sadness, but of gentle clarity. She set the candle aside. The next bundle held a scarf, handmade, beautiful in its own way, but dyed in a shade that never felt like her skin or her heart. She remembered the day she received it, the polite smile, the warmth of the gesture, the quiet guilt that followed each time she saw it in her wardrobe and didn't wear it. She let the fabric slip through her fingers. It felt softer than she remembered, and somehow that softness made it easier to release. Another small package revealed a ceramic bowl glazed with bright colors that always felt too loud for her quiet kitchen. Someone once told her it was perfect for her, and she had believed them because she hadn't yet learned to trust her own taste. She turned the bowl in her hands, watching the way the light caught the uneven surface. It was lovely, just not for her. One by one, she unwrapped the gifts she had kept out of politeness, out of fear of disappointing, out of an old habit of putting other people's comfort above her own. As each item emerged from its paper cocoon, she felt something tender open inside her. Not regret, but recognition. These objects were never wrong. They simply didn't belong. Not to her. Not anymore. She gathered them gently, placing them in the may go pile. Her movements were slow, almost ceremonial, as if honoring the people who gave them, while finally honoring herself too. When the last gift was unwrapped, she sat back and let the stillness settle around her. The pile beside her had grown, and yet she didn't feel emptier. She felt lighter, a subtle lifting in her chest, as though she had made space for her own quiet preferences, her own quiet truth. In the hush of the room, she realized something. Keeping things out of guilt was its own kind of heaviness, a weight carried not in the hands, but in the heart. She brushed a strand of hair behind her ear and looked back into the box. More waited. She was ready. Beneath the soft folds of tissue paper, her fingers found a small bundle tied together with a thin, pale ribbon. The knot was loose, as if time itself had been gently tugging at it. Over the years, she lifted the bundle from the box, and it felt delicate in her hands, light yet full of echoes she hadn't heard in a long while. Slowly, she loosened the ribbon. It slipped away without resistance, falling onto her lap like a quiet exhale. The letters spread slightly, revealing edges softened by age. Some were folded neatly, others with creases that showed they'd been opened more than once. Ink pressed into paper that had traveled through years to settle in her hands tonight. She chose one gently, unfolding it with the care you give to something that once meant the world. The handwriting was familiar, a looping, enthusiastic script from a friend who had once felt like a sister. She read only a few lines, enough to feel the warmth of what once was. Their laughter, their shared dreams, their long evening conversations that stretched into the small hours. And then, like many things in life, their paths simply drifted, not with anger, not with hurt, just with the quiet inevitability of two rivers flowing toward different seas. She folded the letter again, pressing it gently, a soft smile touching her lips. The next letter came from someone who once held a large space in her heart, someone she had loved before she knew how to love herself, someone who had taught her tenderness and also taught her to walk away when she began disappearing inside the relationship. She scanned the beginning, felt the familiar pull of nostalgia, and then let it go. Before the ache could gather, she realized she didn't need to reopen every feeling to honor what it once meant. Another letter, short and simple, from a person she hadn't thought about in years. A thank you, a birthday wish, a small piece of a season-long past. As she moved through the bundle, she noticed something shifting inside her. The letters no longer carried the weight they once did. They felt like chapters from a book she had finished reading, precious, formative, but complete. She gathered them into her hands, sensing the tenderness of her own journey woven through each envelope. There was no regret, no longing, only gratitude for the ways these people had shaped her heart. With a slow, steady breath, she placed the letters into the may-go pile, not as a dismissal, but as a gentle acknowledgement that she no longer needed to hold the past in its physical form. What matters stays. She realized the rest can be released, like petals on a quiet stream. She rested her hands on her knees, feeling the subtle lightness settle through her. The house around her felt warmer, somehow, as if approving of the space she was making. And deep inside the box, something else waited, small, still, ready to be lifted into the light. Her hand moved gently through the box, past the letters, until her fingertips touched something cool and smooth, a small velvet pouch she hadn't seen in years. She lifted it carefully, feeling the softness against her skin, feeling the familiar weight inside. To shift from one side to the other, the drawstring opened with a quiet whisper, and a delicate silver necklace slid into her palm. It shimmered faintly in the lamplight, catching the warm glow in tiny, hesitant reflections. She remembered it immediately, not because she loved it, but because she wore it for all the wrong reasons. She traced the thin chain with her thumb. It was beautiful in the way something can be beautiful without ever feeling like yours. She remembered the voice that once told her it suited her, that it made her look more polished, more elegant, more acceptable. She had believed them, or at least she had wanted to. So she wore the necklace to dinners, to gatherings, even on days when it felt strange around her neck, like a quiet reminder of the version of herself she thought she needed to become. To be seen as she held it now, she felt no sting, no bitterness, only a soft, almost tender understanding of the woman she once was. A woman who tried so hard to be what others hoped for. The chain pulled across her fingers, cool and fluid, like a thin stream of moonlight. She lifted it slightly, letting it dangle in the air. In that moment, she felt the quiet distance between who she had been and who she had become. She was no longer the woman who reached for approval before she reached for comfort, no longer the woman who shaped herself to fit the outlines others handed her. She had learned to choose herself gently, steadily, beautifully, and this necklace, though lovely, belonged to a chapter she had already outgrown. With gratitude in her heart, she closed her fingers around it one last time, then laid it softly in the may-go pile. The sound it made, a barely audible touch against cardboard, felt like a quiet closure, a door softly, lovingly letting itself fall into place. She breathed a little deeper, her shoulders relaxed another shade, and the air around her seemed to settle in peaceful agreement. Inside the box, more memories waited, more truths, more releases, and she felt ready to meet them all. At first glance, they looked like simple notebooks, their covers slightly bent, their corners softened by time. But as she lifted them from the box, she felt the familiar weight of expectations she once tried so hard to meet. 3 notebooks, different colors, different sizes, but all carrying the same quiet ache of dreams she thought she should want. She placed them on her lap and opened the first one. The pages were filled with neat lists, color-coded goals, schedules that stretched for months, words written with determination but not with joy, plans to be more productive, plans to be more disciplined, plans to change herself into someone she didn't even recognize anymore. She traced the ink with her fingertip, and for a moment she saw the woman she had been, earnest, hopeful, trying so hard to be better without ever pausing to ask, better for whom? She turned a few pages, more plans, more structure, more ways she had tried to control a life that simply needed her softness. Closing the first notebook, she opened the second. This one was messier, scribbles of new beginnings, unfinished lists, half-formed ideas. It held the energy of someone trying to reinvent herself. Out of restlessness, not out of truth, she smiled softly, not with embarrassment, but with compassion. She understood now. that she didn't fail these plans. They simply weren't hers. The third notebook was the quietest of them all. Few pages were written in, just scattered sentences, little attempts at goals that never felt alive. She read one line slowly. Start over. Become someone you can be proud of. She closed her eyes. The tenderness of it touched something deep within her. She wasn't unkind to herself back then. She was simply lost, trying, reaching, hoping that change came from doing more instead of listening more. She lifted all 3 notebooks in her hands. They no longer felt heavy, only distant, like artifacts from a version of her who wanted so much but didn't yet know that rest and self-trust were allowed. With a slow exhale, she kept one page, a single line that still felt true, a reminder of her courage rather than her striving. The rest she gathered into the Mako pile. They landed gently, soft as a leaf falling. A small release, a quiet clearing, and in the hush that followed, she felt something subtle shift in the room around her, as if the space itself was beginning to breathe. A little easier, there was more waiting at the bottom of the box. Something tender, something she remembered and yet had forgotten. She reached toward it, ready for the next truth that wished to be seen. At the very bottom of the box, beneath the weight of old papers and delicate memories, her fingers brushed against fabric, soft, cool, barely touched by time. She lifted it slowly, and the folds unfurled like a quiet breath. A dress she hadn't seen in years. A dress she bought on a day when she felt a rare spark of courage, but not enough to let that courage stay. The color was deep and gentle, somewhere between twilight and dusk, and the fabric slipped over her hands like water moving around stones. She spread it across her lap. It looked beautiful there, resting softly against her legs, as if waiting for the moment she would finally choose it. She remembered the day she bought it, a warm afternoon, a store filled with mirrors and soft music. She had tried it on, stood before her reflection, and felt, just for an instant, like a version of herself she longed to grow into. A woman who took up space without apologizing. A woman who walked with ease. A woman who believed she was allowed to feel beautiful. But when she stepped out of the changing room, the old hesitations returned, like shadows creeping across the floor. She worried it was too much, too bold, too unlike the safe version of herself she had always offered the world. Still, she bought it, a quiet hope folded into fabric, and then she tucked it into her wardrobe, where it waited and waited and waited. Not for an occasion, She realized now, but for her, she ran her fingertips along the seam and felt no disappointment, only tenderness. The woman she is now no longer hides from herself, but she also no longer needs to wear something to prove she has changed. She has already changed. The dress belonged to a dream, a beautiful one, but one she had outgrown in the most gentle way. Holding it, she whispered, a small thank you for the courage it once gave her, even if only in a fleeting moment beneath bright shop lights. Then she folded it carefully, respectfully, as if tucking away an old wish, with love rather than loss. When she placed the dress into the may-go pile, it rested there like a soft exhale, a release without regret. And as she looked back at the box, she felt a subtle warmth in her chest. Not sadness, not nostalgia, just the quiet truth that she no longer needed to become the woman she once imagined. She had already become something gentler, something truer, something wholly her own. Only one layer remained in the box. Photographs, pieces of past selves, waiting to be held with the same tenderness. She reached for them, ready to meet herself through the eyes of time. The last layer of the box was a thin stack of photographs, edges curled slightly from years of resting in the dark. She lifted them with both hands as if holding something fragile and tenderly alive. The first photograph showed her standing in a sunlit garden, smiling brightly, eyes filled with a softness she barely recognized now, a younger version of herself, hopeful, eager, still believing she had to earn her place. In every room she entered, she touched the edge of the image, her thumb brushing the glossy surface. In a slow, loving gesture, "Sweet girl," she whispered in her heart. "I'm so proud of you." She set the photo beside her and picked up the next. In this one, she sat at a cafe table with a book and a cup of tea, trying to look calm at a time when her world was anything but. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. There was a familiar tightness in her shoulders, one she remembered all too well. But instead of sadness, she felt a wave of tenderness. That woman had been trying her best with the tools she had, trying to pretend calm so she could someday find it. She placed that photo down gently. Another photograph in her laughing, a full, unguarded laugh captured mid-moment by someone who loved her then. Her hair was windblown, her cheeks flushed, and for the first time she saw something she had never noticed before. She had been beautiful even when she didn't feel it, especially then. Her chest warmed with a soft, expanding ache, not painful, just honest. 2 more photos remained. In one, she stood in a crowded room, trying to blend into the background. She remembered the heaviness of that night, the effort of being present while wanting to disappear. Yet, looking at it now, she felt compassion, not shame. She no longer judged the woman who once felt small. She simply held her, and in the final photograph, she saw herself at a quiet lakeside, alone, thoughtful, the wind stirring the surface of the water. Behind her, she remembered that day. It had been a turning point, though she didn't realize it at the time. A day she had walked for hours, just to feel something still inside her. A day she had unknowingly begun, the gentle journey back to herself. She pressed the photo to her chest. For a moment, eyes closed, breathing slowly. These images were not reminders of who she failed to be. They were proof of how beautifully she had grown. She sorted through them once more, keeping only two: the garden, smile, and the lakeside gaze. The rest she placed into the may go pile with a quiet sense of honoring. Letting them go didn't erase anything. It simply freed the space they had once taken. As she gathered the photographs, she felt a soft shift inside, a loosening, an opening, a warmth that settled deep in her chest. She was no longer held by who she had been. She was held by who she had become. And somewhere within the stillness of the room, a new clarity waited, a truth rising gently from the space she had created. For a long moment, she simply sat there on the wooden floor, surrounded by the quiet piles she had made, the things that would stay and the things that were ready to go. The room felt different now, not because the objects had moved, but because something inside her had. It was subtle at first, like the faint cooling of the air after a warm day, or the way twilight settles without anyone noticing the exact moment. Light becomes dusk, but it was there, a widening, a loosening, a slow, gentle unfurling of something long held. She drew in a breath that reached deeper than the ones before, not forced, not intentional, just allow. And in that simple inhale, she felt it, the spaciousness she had been craving without ever saying the words. She looked around her. The may-go pile was larger than she expected, a quiet mountain of things she had carried out of habit, out of politeness, out of an old belief that more made her safer. But the pile that would stay, it was small, simple, true, a few pages, a photograph, a memory, a truth. For the first time that evening, she saw clearly that what mattered had never been the objects. It had been the softness she allowed herself to feel as she let them go. She placed her hand over her chest, the warmth of her palm meeting the steady rhythm beneath. something inside her answered that touch. A quiet recognition, a quiet relief. She wasn't losing anything. She was making space. Space for rest, for gentleness, for the woman she was becoming. In the quiet moments between breaths, the house around her seemed to deepen in stillness, as if it too felt the shift, as if the walls exhale. After holding years of memory, she closed her eyes for a moment, letting the softness settle, letting the weight fall away, without ceremony, without drama, just softly, like dust drifting down after a long forgotten movement. And as she opened her eyes again, the room looked almost new, not because anything had changed, but because she had a sense of quiet empowerment rose gently within her, not loud, not triumphant, just steady, like a candle flame that knows it will not go out. There was only one thing left to do now, one final act of release. Before the room could rest, she turned toward the box she had filled so carefully, the box that no longer held importance, but gratitude. It was time to let it go. She rose from the floor with unhurried movements, and her body gently following the calm that had settled inside her. The may-go box waited by her side, not heavy, not light, but simply ready. She placed her hands on either side of it, feeling the faint give of the cardboard, feeling the quiet stories it still held. There was no resistance in her now, no tug of doubt, just a steady knowing that these things had walked far enough with her. She lifted the box slowly. It pressed into her palms, solid but manageable, like a chapter closing itself. Each step toward the hallway was soft and deliberate. Her bare feet whispered over the wooden floor, and the house seemed to listen, attentive, tender, as though witnessing a moment it had been waiting to see. When she reached the front door, she set the box down beside her shoes. The sound it made was gentle and final, a quiet settling that echoed more in her heart than in the room. She knelt beside it, one hand resting lightly on the lid, not to hold on, but to say thank you to the younger versions of herself who collected these pieces in hopes of becoming whole. Thank you to the memories that had shaped her in ways she didn't always understand. Thank you to the moments of confusion, the seasons of striving, the gentle lessons woven into every forgotten item. She breathed out slowly, and the exhale carried a softness with it, the softness of finally releasing what never truly belonged to her light. Her gaze drifted upward to the door. Beyond it, a new chapter waited, patient and wide open. But for now, this simple placing of the box was enough, more than enough. She stood again, letting her fingers trail one last time over the cardboard top, It didn't feel like goodbye. It felt like relief, like respect, like setting down a bag she had forgotten she was carrying. When she stepped back into the living room, her body felt different, lighter, warmer, more hers. The room welcomed her return, quiet, spacious, holding only what needed to remain. And as she stood in the center of that space, she realized something simple and true. Not everything has to follow you into the next part of your life. Some things are meant to stay behind. With gratitude, the living room felt different the moment she stepped back inside. Not emptier, but clearer, as though the air itself had been gently stirred and now settled in a quieter shape. The small stack of things she chose to keep rested neatly on the floor, bathed in the warm glow of the single lamp. A photograph, a page, a memory, a truth, so little, and yet somehow it felt like everything she needed. She walked further into the room and stood in the open space that had been hidden beneath years of belongings. The wooden floor stretched wide beneath her, smooth and familiar, holding her with the same steady presence it had always offered. For a moment, she simply let her eyes wander over the bare surfaces, the soft corners, the quiet walls. Everything looked the same, and yet nothing did. It was as if the room had exhaled with her, as if by setting down what she no longer needed, she had given the house permission to do the same. She reached out and trailed her fingers along the edge of a shelf that now held only two small objects. Her touch was light, almost reverent. The silence around her felt gentle, like a hand resting softly between her shoulder blades. With each breath she took, the space seemed to widen, not outwardly, but inwardly, inside her chest, inside her thoughts. She felt returned to something simple, something honest, something she had lost without noticing. Herself, the woman who no longer needed to be filled, to be whole, the woman who no longer needed to carry more, to feel prepared, the woman who understood now that spaciousness is its own kind of comfort. She walked to the window and placed her palms on the cool glass. Outside, the night was soft, quiet, almost luminous. The world beyond the pane looked peaceful, not because it had changed, but because she had a slow warmth spread through her chest as she stood there. Not excitement, not anticipation, just calm, a deep, settling calm that whispered, "You are allowed to live lightly." She stepped back from the window and let her gaze drift over the open room once more. There was nothing missing. There was only space, and in that space, she felt herself expand. The house, in all its stillness and softness, felt like it was offering her something, not memories, not belongings, but a gentle mirror, reflecting who she had become. Someone unburdened, someone at ease, someone free. And in that quiet, the house gave her back to herself. The room was quiet now, quiet in the way a soft blanket settles over tired shoulders. She moved to the center of the space and let her body sink gently onto the wooden floor, the warmth of the lamp casting a tender glow around her. There were no more decisions to make, no more memories to sift through, no more pieces of the past asking for her attention. Only stillness remained, slow breathing stillness. She closed her eyes, and the silence welcomed her like an old friend she had finally returned to. Her breath deepened, falling into a gentle rhythm, steady, slow, unhurried, each inhale softening her, each exhale emptying the last traces of weight she no longer carried. Around her, the house settled too, a quiet creak in the floor, a faint whisper in the walls, as if the space itself were easing into rest. The night outside spread softly across the window, a dark, velvety calm that asked nothing of her. It held her the way water holds a floating leaf, effortlessly, tenderly, completely. Her thoughts drifted like feathers in a slow current, light and unanchored, nothing pressing, nothing loud, just the soft hum of being. She felt the spaciousness inside her stretch out like a quiet meadow, open, peaceful, untouched. The past was behind her, the move ahead of her, but here, in this exact moment, there was only rest, only breath, only calm, only the gentle hum of a heart that had made space to feel free again. And as her body grew heavier with the sweetness of coming sleep, she felt the night gather around her, a soft cradle, a warm hush, a promise that she was held, a promise that she was safe, a promise that she could drift without needing to hold on. Her breath slowed to the quiet rhythm of dreaming. Her thoughts loosened into soft, dissolving line, and the night, steady and kind, carried her, held her, wrapped her in rest. Sleep well, dear one, you are safe, and the night will hold you